Hi, welcome to Empathy in Action, where we talk about different issues through a lens of empathy and talk about action. Empathy plus action, empathy in action. My name is Lynne and I'm director of the Kidsbridge Tolerance Center in Ewing. And I'm so excited today because I have one of my favorite people, Principal Paula Bethea, Principal of Kilmer Middle School. Welcome and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And you are also an honoree for the Kidsbridge Tolerance Center 14th annual for all that you do for your students and for the Trenton community. So it's nice to see you here, grateful that we can chat a little bit.
Thank you.
So I always start this with the lens of empathy. And life is changing so quickly today. So if you could, through this lens, what is it like to be a black or brown child today in Trenton? What is it like to be a black or brown parent, caregiver, grandparent in Trenton? What is that like today, maybe before and after COVID?
I want to say that prior to COVID, I think the world, we all were just moving. You have your routine. You're getting up in the morning, you're getting the kids to school, you're going to work, and you're coming home. You may have a little time to spend together. You're making sure homework's done or things like that. So I don't want to say that black or brown children have a different lifestyle than children in affluent communities. It's the same. We have the same routines. If a parent has to work at night, they may have to have older siblings or other relatives help take care of them, so it may reverse. But I think that after COVID and when we all were, the rug was pulled from all of us, and I often say whether you, as an educator, whether it was your first year of teaching or your 20th year of teaching, everything changed March 17th, 2020, everything. Across the world. And I often say, they always talk about the uneven playing field, but at that point, we all were dealing with the same playing field.
Correct.
We didn't know what this disease really was doing. We just started hearing about death and death and death. And if you were watching news, I had to literally stop watching the news because it was actually depressing me. And on top of that, life still happened, families were losing relatives, children were losing time in school, teachers. The job of a teacher and educator is human contact, and all of a sudden you can no longer have human contact. So that empathy for not only for our children, but for ourselves as a nation, as a world, actually started to have us be more reflective. So I think it took some time for us to really understand what children were dealing with, what adults were dealing with, because it was stressful for all of us.
And we had to make it up as we went along.
Exactly.
So there is a silver lining. I think we talked about that briefly, and we'll go to that in a minute. But I know Trenton youth, some of them have higher ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, and trauma, and maybe a parent is in jail and such. So I just wondered if you would, I know you dive down into the family and you're trying to help your kids, particularly the middle school youth. And we could talk about the Kidsbridge program later. But how do you help, and maybe how can other people help these kids who need a little bit more support?
So what I can honestly say is that our school is truly a community school that cares.
Can you tell people who are listening what is a community school? Some people don't know.
We're not labeled a community school because they also have a community school, actually Rivera School in Trenton. But when it comes to connecting with our families, giving them the needs, because of course education is, the 8 to 2:30 time frame that you're in the building, but a lot of it is before and after the building. So we did things, in collaboration with the district. Every Wednesday, food was available to families. My wonderful school counselors would definitely helped families night or day. We also have teachers, if they were something that they may have noticed, or a child that wasn't logging on or sleepy, calling in on those families. calling in parents, a lot of work.
A lot of attention.
A lot of attention took to that. And I think that, you know, prior to COVID, you know, you would drop your child off and you just said, okay, now they're safe or you're okay. You're looking into their homes and they're looking into the teachers' homes at the same time.
Right.
So there's that, before it was just a one-way street, there's that two-way of communication that I think actually improved, because parents, especially those who were home with the children,
yes.
a lot of them said, we really, really appreciate what you all do, because not only are we seeing how our child is interacting in the classroom, but other children, and some children who may not have had, you know, a watchful eye, or, you know, like I said, some children are being raised by grandparents or older parents. I know my parents don't know much about the computer, so some kids would really kind of get away with some things,
right.
you know, that they don't know, because your grandparent
right.
doesn't know too
right.
much about the
right.
computer
right.
and how it works.
Right.
So it was very helpful that we had such a dedicated staff that really not only looked at what the education piece was, but of course the social and emotional piece.
Right.
So social and emotional learning. So one of the things that we did do, not only did we provide social and emotional support for our students, but we also did PD with our staff for social and emotional support as adults.
Professional development.
And we actually partnered with TC&J.
Yes.
And we did a PD all day on
Wonderful.
social and emotional learning in
Wonderful.
the classroom and helping children as we go through the pandemic.
And the foundation of that would be, of course, empathy.
Exactly.
So it's wonderful you
Exactly.
did that. So how can I not talk about the Kids Bridge program? We partnered
Yes.
over maybe a decade
Yes.
on social emotional skills for your elementary school.
Exactly.
And one of the programs we're proudest of is Mr. Darren Freedom Green.
Yes.
Who, with different classes, it's been 6th, 7th, and 8th, who would come to the school.
Right.
So with COVID, pivot,
Right.
pivot. And so I was there many times that he would Zoom in
Exactly.
with Erin,
And our Condash and our 8th
and the
grade
other
class,
teacher's name.
Sharello.
Right. So he would do that and just connecting,
Right.
listening to the kids. Maybe there'd be a parent who was, you know, engaged. Another aside is that during COVID, parents, you said this, appreciating educators because it's so hard to teach.
Exactly.
I learned that in Kids Bridge very early on.
Yes.
I was not a teacher. I come from, you know, marketing and the museum world.
Right.
And I found teaching to be exhausting.
Yes, exactly.
It's so, because not only do you have to teach, but in a way you have to entertain.
Right,
And that's a
exactly.
lot of work to keep the kids engaged. So God bless, you know, Mr. Green going in every week and talking to your Kilmer
Right.
middle schoolers. And then we have the fall coming up, so we'll have to figure out what we're doing
Right.
to get to connect to those kids, but safely. So we'll figure that out.
And the positive thing is, because of what happened and because our modes of communication are now more open, before we just thought it only had to be an in-person thing. Now we know we can Zoom in, we can, if Darren can't make it, if a child can't make it, we could still have the Zoom ready for children and everyone to sign in on and still have that connection. Of course, the person-to-person is always much better, but he's been with us so many years, he's a part of the family as well. So and he's well known in the community.
Yes.
So it's never
Well-respected.
It's never a issue. He makes adjustments when we need to make adjustments. If he needs to make an adjustment because of his time frame or you do,
Yes.
there's never an issue. We communicate and we just make it happen.
No, he is the best, and he really, I love the way he calls kids my babies,
Right,
like
right.
the babies, because aren't we all sort of
Right,
babies
right.
growing up, and we need each other, and he really has such a profound commitment and sense of community. I know he does a lot of other things, but Kidsbridge is really very lucky to have him.
Exactly.
So, backing up and being a little bit more broad, what I so admire you,
Thank
your
you.
tenacity, your commitment.
Thank you.
Sadly, some of your kids, you're so committed to them. You have attended some of your own students' funerals.
Yes.
Which I would like the audience to know, like this is serious
Yes.
education. When you wrap around a child and try to help them, you may be saving a life.
Exactly.
So, what inspires you as a school principal to not give up and to work so hard and to help these kids? How do you get up in the morning and give it your all every day? Because some days are not
always.
easy.
No, not always.
Yeah.
I think a big part of my inspiration definitely comes from our school family. As you know, you and I personally shared that I've had some health issues, but there isn't a day, an email, a text. One teacher's been sending me a card every week.
Oh.
And I know that doesn't just grow just simultaneously. So if you're like that with me, and I'm that way with you when something tragic or sad happens with you, as far as our school family embracing one another, it's obvious it's going to transcend into what we do for our children. And yes, sadly, we have lost some children through not just violence, but also a horrific accident. And for the past, I think, 5-6 years, we've lost a student or staff member almost every year. Recently, we actually lost a former student to a shooting. And the numbers of staff members and students that still came to embrace the family really shows how truly Trenton as a community can really stand up for our families. We don't always want to be reactive, of course. We want to be proactive. So programs such as Kids Bridge and other community organizations that we work with to discuss, making good decisions, and if you're at somewhere at a particular time and kind of get a feel for that place just isn't safe, get home. But that child in particular in July, he was going home. He was on his way home. So it's hard to say, what exactly is the key and the answer. And I often say, and I even sometimes post it, we can't always blame the politicians and the schools and things like that. But we as a community I grew up where all my neighbors knew who I was before I even got home. Or if we got in trouble, your neighbors would tell your parents. And now sometimes you can't say something to a child because another parent gets upset or things like that. Not all the time, but those are some of the things that happen that's a little disappointing. But
you've built community around your school.
Exactly.
In your school and around
our school. So there isn't a student who's gone on to college. I have a big group that's my own daughter started college. Yesterday was her first class. And to have students contact me and say, Miss Bethea, I got into 7 schools, and Miss Bethea, I'm going into the armed forces, or Miss Bethea, I'm working, whatever it is. If they're doing something positive, I'm always congratulating them, always sharing with our other staff what they're doing. Staff will go to a Wendy's or a Wawa and say, hey, I saw so and so, and they're working, or 2 and 3 friends working, or they're still involved in basketball or things of that nature. So that's what makes all of this, what I do as an educator, it really brings to light how important it is to be there and be someone and be genuine.
And be present.
And be present, exactly.
Which again takes a lot of energy, empathy, walking in the shoes.
Many of my parents have my personal cell phone number, so when I had to go out sick, I actually had to call them and say, I won't be there. Oh no, Miss Bethea, I said, you're in good hands. You know my vice principal, Mr. Williamson. You have good people who are there for you.
You are extraordinary, and I hope an inspiration to other people.
Thank you.
So we talked about community. As you know, I was born in Trenton, grew up in Trenton, and had that same sense of community. Like if we were doing something wrong, the neighbor across the street. So, we had to watch and look out for others, and it was just, for me, I'm older now, a great place to grow up. So community, how can, for people listening, how can they be community to you? How can they help your school, your students, or more kids in Trenton? Because this is...
So what I tell people often, don't come in with a sense of woe is me or woe is the children. They are very good readers of your energy and your belief systems. If you go in thinking that, they're just these poor children, brown and black children from Trenton who, have no hope, that's not true. One of our shining stars is right now, I think, finishing her senior year in Princeton.
Wow.
Like I said, another young man who got into college, got into 7. 6 of them are top universities in the country.
Wonderful.
Single mom who's just trying to make it and calls me all the time. Miss Bethea, how are you handling your daughter going to college? I said, how are you handling your son going to college? So I think for the negative stories, and someone just said that again on social media, there are so many great positive stories of people who are just beating the odds in Trenton. We mentioned, Mr. Green, Darren is one of them. A friend of mine, Terrence Stokes, we talk about Bruce Boyd, we talk about Lakeisha Sutton, we talk about Althing Mew, who just earned 2 gold medals in the Olympics. If that didn't bring a sense of pride and belief in our children and belief in the human spirit, I don't know what does, because it felt like we all won the gold.
I'm very proud to share that. I had Athing's sister in Hedgepath Williams in 3rd grade, Aout Mu. So I'm going to do a shout out for Aout. And so she has just graduated from college.
Awesome.
And I've stayed in touch with particular kids that, we did a lot of bullying prevention. So my heart went for the kids, who were bullied. So I sort of wrapped around a few kids that I've tracked. And so I didn't know she'd have a super sister.
Exactly.
But the family is very proud. They're from Sudan, South Sudan. So, and I've heard Athing on TV. I'd like to meet her someday. But yeah.
And she in the last interview I saw, she gave Trenton
on the news. Was
because I was waiting when they were, when she was going to run or when they were going to interview her. I said, sometimes they'll say Central Jersey. He said, no, they said Trenton, New Jersey. So,
and they got her country wrong once. But so proud. So proud.
And Greg Grant, who played for the NBA. There's so many great people in Trenton who are returning to Trenton and being such great role models for our students. One of my staff members, Sean Smith, he and his brother have an awesome basketball program, and they're not only do they follow kids through high school, they're making sure they personally dropping kids off at college, because I just learned not only is it getting in college, but the money it takes to get in college, but the money even just to take to buy the things that you need to put in your dorm room. All of that costs.
So this is a way people listening can help.
Let's do care. I know the Smith Foundation. They do an annual college. Kind of a giveaway for kids who are going away.
And also they like to do college readiness. And by the way, we just got a very generous grant from the
Okay.
Foundation.
Nice.
And I love Harold. So shout out to him.
And their great grandmother Pearl was actually a staff member at Kilmer. So
really,
yeah, she was. She was a paraprofessional. Yes, she was paraprofessional. Cool. So the connections, when they say 7 degrees, sometimes I'm like, it's 1 degree, it's half a degree. I'm just at the hospital and met a gentleman who knew a good friend of mine who worked for the districts and also went to Kilmer. He went to Kilmer, the technician at the hospital.
That's cool.
It's like, when they say Trenton makes, the world takes, that is absolutely true.
That's right.
Absolutely true.
That's right. All right. Are there specifically ways that the community can help your students more?
We love mentoring. We love mentoring. Actually, August 27th, we are hosting our back to school extravaganza. It used to be at the Board of Education, but all the schools agreed that it should be more personalized, especially because we were away from buildings for so long in different ways. So that's actually going to be like a community fest. I'm going to have community tables, some giveaways, some music, just to welcome back students. And I always do a big thing on the first day with a kind of a Soul Train line. I invite community members, the mayor, everyone, and we just clap the kids in because I learned a long time ago from a writer educator Steve Barkley, you have to wow children. You have to wow them. And a lot of people say, Ms. Kilmer's always doing programs. We're always doing programs, but we also have kids who love being there every day, and that's what it's all about. Because you're with me 6 to 8 hours a day, 180 days. You have to love me. And I have families that are generations, now I just had when I was a teacher years ago, one of my students has a daughter who brought her kindergartner to me in September. So that means a lot to me. That's also one of the greatest, trust to say, you know what, I want to bring my child into Miss Bethea's hands and the hands of her staff.
That must feel so
It
good.
does. It does. It really
I
feels
mean,
good.
again, circling back to empathy, that you're walking in the shoes, people trust you.
Yes.
And you're a person who gets it done. You take action.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's very inspirational.
Thank you.
So is there any, because I think you're so wise and you've seen thousands of students go through your school and so committed. Do you have advice for other educators or maybe other parents? Some children struggle. Maybe you could tell us a story of a child that was struggling and you made a community around them or figured out a way to help them. There's sometimes no support in the homes.
Right.
How do you, when you face a challenge, how do you
So if
overcome?
I face a challenge, I also have to learn as the leader, I can't take on all challenges. And that's one thing that's kind of a blessing and a curse for me sometimes. So I definitely lean towards my support systems. If there's a child in need of certain things, I call who I know this person, or a parent may reach out to me. Ms. Bethea, I know you know someone who can help me. I mean, whether it's housing, we have a parent liaison, Eris Tunstall, who will, help families. We have a district parent coordinator, Denise, Denise Christ, if I say her name correctly. When families, there's fires, things like that. So always, as an educator, know that our role is it's definitely beyond the classroom. If you've gotten to this role thinking, I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to observe teachers all day and go home, not going to happen. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to teach all day and then I'm going to go home. And some people may feel that's comfortable for them, but every teacher I know has in some way does something extra outside of a contract, outside of something to help children. And years ago, we had a district conference where the speaker said, you forget many things, you never forget a great teacher. And that is so true.
One person can make such a huge difference.
And whether,
teacher, parent, custodian.
Exactly. And whether you're the president of the United States or a dictator from other country, everyone has had a teacher. And that's one thing that makes us all common. Doctors have had great teachers. I actually had a doctor who operated on me who said that he studied under a doctor that I had in another facility. So again,
you were 6 degrees.
Exactly. So it that really opened my mind to education and being an educator and really filling empty vessels is really a part of what we do. But as families, my first teacher were always my parents, still my parents. And the first place we took, I grew up in a church, filled home.
Community.
So I went to Sunday school every Sunday. So my Sunday school teachers, one of which actually became a part-time nurse at my school once. So as families, remember that we're not the enemy. And if there is an issue or something like that, let's work together because children watch us and they listen to what you say at home and they listen to what we say in school. And if they can find a way in the middle to keep us apart, they will find that. So just remember that the child needs to know, you know what, I'm listening to your concerns, but I'm going to talk to the teacher. And I'm going to talk to the teacher with you so that we can come to some happy medium. So there are many stories like that. I know you wanted me an example, but I have many stories of families that we've embraced and child may have be going this way, but we embraced and we got community involved because it doesn't just take the school, it takes the community. Right. And now the child is on the right track.
Active listening.
Yes.
And that the kids are watching you and role modeling from even an earlier age is one of the tenets of my new book.
Yes.
Where I think parents have to examine themselves, self-compassion for themselves.
Exactly.
That they can build the self-compassion in their kids and just raising those empathy
Take them
quotients.
To the park. Take them to so many. We didn't have a lot of money.
Too.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. But my parents would always drive us out here to Princeton Lake, and we would run around Princeton Lake. Or I have another neighbor. She would take me to plays because my mom didn't really know. I had another neighbor, my best friend's mother, who got me involved in a lot of community groups. Gail Cropper. She was She was a principal in Trenton.
But we're running out of time. I want to spend a couple minutes on the world has changed, becoming more sensitive to race, bias. So how, since George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and Kidsbridge, of course, we've been doing diversity appreciation for 15 years, but now we can call it what it is,
Right.
anti-bias, anti-racism.
Right.
And we've started doing programs with preschoolers.
Okay, great. It's
Why
never too
can't
early.
we all be friends? How can you reflect briefly on what the last 2 years have meant to you as an African-American Black woman?
It was very difficult. Anytime there was a story of brutality against anyone, it hurt me to the core. I think of my nephews, who one works on Wall Street, one visits New York often. He does acting. I think of my other nephews who work, different places, and just going to your car. I think of my husband. I think of my dad. And we shouldn't live in fear. We shouldn't live where if I'm pulled over and I haven't done anything that, tensions may get high, and next someone's getting a call. When I think of Breonna Taylor and I watched her story on 2020, it made no sense.
No sense.
For her to die in that way. And every time you think it might be a hope, another situation happens, another case happens, and of course with the media, like this, a person's cell phone really assisted with George Floyd's, the conviction of that police officer.
So you are a role model for kids. Are you, Paula Bethea, hopeful for the future? Because you have to keep going.
Yes.
And the kids are watching you.
Yes.
Are you hopeful for the near future?
I'm hopeful for individuals who are out there with their voice really getting to helping people see. I'm not so hopeful when I see tragedy happen. And I think it has a lot to do on how we're trained. As I was saying earlier, I have a good friend who was a police officer, but I know he also has a background in social work. So I think that if that becomes part of even police training, or
that would be helpful.
That's just my opinion.
I think
if
that would be
comes
helpful.
Part of anyone's training who's going to deal with people, because remember, a lawyer has to go to school for years and years to study and know the law. Shouldn't anyone dealing with the law go to school for years and years and have some background in empathy and understanding? So that's just my opinion. Some people may think differently.
We've run out of time.
Right.
I could talk to you for hours more.
Yes.
But I thank you for coming in and spending the time.
Thank you.
That our audience learns empathy plus action. Let's all, walk in each other's shoes, get along, and care about each other. So big hug to you.
Big hug to you too.
And thank you so much
Always
for
a pleasure,
spending
Lynn.
time with me today.
Always a pleasure.
This is Lynn Azarki from Kidsbridge Tolerance Center. Thank you so much for joining us for Empathy in Action with Paula Bethea. Thank you for coming.